The pen hit the table louder than expected. Several people flinched. He didn't apologize. The CEO leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the woman at the far end of the glass conference table. Outside the windows, traffic crawled 30 floors below, indifferent to the moment that was about to change everything. "We're done pretending," he said. "This company needs leadership, not sentiment." No one spoke. The woman, his wife, didn't move. Her hands rested calmly on the table, not clenched, not shaking. The CEO slid a thin folder across the table. "Your role is redundant," he continued. "Operations support can be outsourced. Governance optics matter now. Investors don't like blurred lines." A board member shifted uncomfortably. Another glanced at legal. She finally spoke. "Are you terminating me?" she asked, "or making a statement?" He smiled, short and sharp. "Both." The room went still. She nodded once. "Then I'll need the paperwork." Legal hesitated. "We can take a recess." "No!" the CEO snapped. "This is happening now." He signed first. Bold strokes, confident, the signature of a man who believed ownership was synonymous with authority. He slid the pen toward her. She picked it up without comment and signed. No protest, no tears, no attempt to negotiate. That unsettled him more than anger would have. "Security will escort you out," he added, as if reminding himself who was in charge. She looked at him for a long moment, not pleading, not angry, just measuring. "That won't be necessary," she said. She stood, gathered a slim folder from her bag, and turned toward legal. "For later," she said quietly, placing the envelope on the table. Then she walked out. The glass doors closed behind her with a soft click. For 3 seconds, no one spoke. Finally, the CEO exhaled. "All right, moving on." No one met his eyes. They didn't clap. They didn't nod. But he didn't notice. He never noticed the silences. 3 years earlier, the company had been nothing but an idea scribbled on a napkin. Back then, he'd been brilliant, but reckless. A talker, a closer. The kind of man who could sell belief before he ever sold results. She'd been the one who asked what happened after belief ran out. They met at a small networking event. He was loud. She was quiet. He talked about disruption. She asked about control. "Who holds the voting rights if outside capital comes in?" she'd asked. He laughed. "We'll figure that out when we're big enough to matter." She didn't smile. "You should figure it out before then," she said. He didn't realize it then, but that was the moment he stopped being alone. She didn't want a title when the company incorporated. She didn't want visibility. She didn't even want her name on the website. "You'll need flexibility," she told him. "And I don't want to be part of the noise." She helped structure early agreements. She flagged clauses he skimmed past. She insisted on terms that protected control without ever explaining why. He trusted her, until he didn't. Success changed the room before it changed the people. New executives arrived, new advisors, people who spoke in metrics and optics and influence. They didn't understand why his wife sat in meetings without speaking. They didn't understand why legal deferred to her in private. They understood hierarchy, and she didn't fit. "She doesn't add visible value," one consultant said carefully. "She has no direct reports," another noted. "She undermines authority," someone else whispered. "Yours." That one stuck. He began noticing things he hadn't before. how people waited for her reaction, how decisions slowed when she frowned, how she could derail a plan with a single quiet question. He told himself it was coincidence. Then he told himself it was manipulation. The day he decided to fire her, he slept better than he had in months. This would restore order, prove leadership, silence the doubts. He chose the boardroom intentionally. He wanted witnesses. He wanted finality. He wanted to win. 2 weeks after she left, the first delay hit. The Series C funding round stalled without explanation. The investors were reviewing internal alignment. He waved it off. Then a supplier paused negotiations. Then legal requested clarification on share structures. Then a board member canceled a lunch. He told himself these things happened. They always did. Until his assistant appeared in the doorway one morning, pale and stiff. "The board has called an emergency meeting," she said. "They've asked that you not attend." He laughed. "That's not how this works." She swallowed. They were very clear. For the first time, something cold moved in his chest. In a quiet office across town, she watched the company dashboard update in real time. Not with satisfaction, with inevitability. She hadn't planned revenge. She'd planned resilience. Power, she believed, didn't need to announce itself. It only needed patience. The boardroom felt smaller when he walked into it without his name on the agenda. He noticed it immediately. The seating arrangement had changed. His chair, the one at the head of the table, was gone. Replaced by a neutral seat halfway down the right side, indistinguishable from the others. "Where's my—" he began. The chair of the board didn't let him finish. "Please sit," she said calmly. "We'll begin shortly." He smiled tightly and sat, telling himself this was posturing. Consultants loved symbolism. Boards loved leverage. Legal was already there. So was the CFO. None of them met his eyes. The chair folded her hands. "We've identified several governance inconsistencies that require immediate clarification." He leaned back. "You could have called me." "We tried," Legal said, voice even, multiple times. That stung. "What inconsistencies?" he asked. Legal slid a tablet across the table. "Equity structure, voting control, beneficial ownership." He glanced down, annoyed. "That's all settled. Standard." Legal hesitated, just a fraction too long. "It isn't," she said. The room went quiet. "For the record," the board chair added, "this isn't disciplinary. Yet." "Yet," he straightened. "What exactly is the concern?" Legal tapped the screen. Several early-stage entities linked to the company's formation hold consolidated voting rights. Those entities have never exercised direct authority, but they retain it. "So," he snapped, "that was intentional. We needed stability." "Yes," Legal said, "but the controlling interest doesn't belong to you." The words landed wrong, like they'd been spoken in another language. He laughed once. "Of course it does." Legal didn't smile. "It doesn't." The CFO finally spoke. "We've been operating under the assumption that operational authority equaled control." "And now?" he demanded. "And now," the CFO said carefully, "we're not sure who actually owns the company." Something cold tightened behind his ribs. "This is absurd," he said. "I founded this company." "You founded the brand," the board chair corrected. "That's not the same thing." Silence followed. Legal cleared her throat. There is documentation. She reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. The same envelope his wife had left behind. He stared at it. You've already seen this? He asked. Legal nodded. This morning. He swallowed. And you didn't think to? We needed time, she said, to understand it. He reached for the envelope, but the board chair raised a hand. Not yet. Anger flared. You don't get to... We do, she said, because until we finish reviewing this, your authority is suspended. Suspended, the word echoed. The envelope contained trusts, proxies, voting rights structured through shell entities she had set up years ago. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even hidden. It was simply invisible to anyone who hadn't been looking. 51%. Held quietly. By her. He couldn't breathe. He called her. No answer. He texted. Nothing. He emailed. Silence. The board voted, unanimously. He wasn't there when it happened. He learned from the press. A brief statement. Leadership transition. Strategic realignment. No scandal. No name-calling. Just a quiet shift that made him disappear from his own story. His badge didn't work. Security met him at the entrance. They were polite. Professional. Worse than cruelty. A severance agreement waited in his inbox. Clean terms, final language. No room for negotiation. He signed it alone in his apartment, staring at the walls he'd once imagined decorating with magazine covers. The articles ran. Not about him, about stability, about continuity, about leadership resilience during transition. His name appeared once, buried in the third paragraph. Then it stopped appearing at all. She gave one interview. Short, controlled. She spoke about structure, not revenge. About foresight, not betrayal. She never mentioned his name. Not once. He watched it on his laptop at 2 a.m, sitting in the dark. He left her 3 voicemails. None were returned. He sent 1 letter. It came back unopened. Months passed. He didn't spiral, not completely. He took consulting gigs, small firms, startups too early to know better. He gave advice he used to ignore. He talked less. He listened more. He caught himself quoting her sometimes, without meaning to. Who holds the voting rights if things go wrong? What happens after belief runs out? He stopped introducing himself as a founder. He stopped using titles at all. They met once, briefly. A conference he almost skipped. She was leaving as he arrived. 15 minutes in the lobby of a hotel neither of them had chosen. She looked the same, calm, unreadable. You didn't ask, she said. He blinked. What? Before you fired me, you didn't ask what I'd built. You didn't ask what I knew. You didn't ask anything. He swallowed. I thought I already knew. She nodded slowly. That was your mistake. I know. You lost more than a company, she continued. You lost someone who would have protected you from yourself. His throat tightened. I know. She studied him for a long moment. Then she said something he didn't expect. I don't hate you. He didn't know what to say. But I don't trust you, she added. And I never will again. That hurt more than losing the company. Time didn't heal it, but it did soften the edges. He built a new reputation, Smaller, quieter, he helped founders ask better questions. He warned them about the cost of not listening. He became the person he used to dismiss. The one in the room who said, "Wait, have you thought about this?" He didn't remarry, didn't date much, not out of loyalty, out of clarity. He understood now what he hadn't before, that some losses teach you who you really were, not who you thought you were becoming. One night, years later, an invitation arrived. No return address, no name, just a time, a location, and a single sentence. You should understand what was built. He told himself he wouldn't go. Then, the next morning, he found himself putting on a clean shirt and leaving his apartment early. Not because he hoped to win anything back, because there are some doors a person walks through just to know what's on the other side. The address led him to a hotel conference center downtown, the kind used for quiet negotiations and quiet endings. He reached the listed room and paused. Security stood outside, but they didn't stop him. One of them glanced at a tablet, nodded, and stepped aside as if he belonged there. That made his stomach tighten. Inside, the room was half full. Executives, attorneys, 2 journalists seated far back, notebooks open but faces unreadable. On the wall, a projection glowed softly. Foundation and continuity. Briefing. He didn't understand what any of it meant until he saw the first slide. A timeline. And on the timeline were dates he remembered too well. Early funding, early hires, early risk. Then he saw something else. Her fingerprints. Not her name. Her design. A structure that had been quietly guiding the company long before he ever thought to ask who held the steering wheel. He took a seat near the back, keeping his head down. A man stepped to the front. Not the CEO, not legal. Someone older, calm, with the kind of posture that came from years of solving problems no one else could see. "We're here," the man began, "to formalize what has been true since the beginning. The company's stability has always relied on systems designed to outlast any single leader." A few people nodded. He didn't. His palms were damp. The man continued. "There has been speculation, commentary, and unnecessary drama around the leadership transition. That ends today." He clicked to the next slide. Risk mitigation events. Under it were bullet points that made his throat dry. Controlled dilution prevention. Fiduciary breach trigger protections. Litigation shield design. Reputation containment plan. Containment plan. He stared at the screen. That wasn't normal governance language. That was defense. That was war planning. He felt heat crawl up his neck, equal parts humiliation and dread. The man spoke again. "The majority stakeholder has requested that this briefing remain factual. No interviews, no personal narratives, only the truth of what was built and why." A journalist raised a hand. "Who is the majority stakeholder?" The man smiled politely. "That is not relevant today. What is relevant is the structure. The structure is what saved this company." Saved. That word hit him differently than it should have. Halfway through the briefing, he understood why he'd been summoned. The next slide wasn't about voting shares or proxies. It was about him, not his feelings, his liabilities. The man pointed to a chart. In the company's early years, several high-risk decisions were made by leadership that could have exposed the organization to catastrophic legal and financial consequences. He swallowed. The room was silent in a way that felt deliberate. "The majority stakeholder put safeguards in place," the man continued, "to prevent those consequences from destroying the company." A board member spoke carefully. This includes shielding prior leadership from certain legal outcomes. He froze. Shielding him? The man nodded. Correct. The journalist's pen paused. Are you saying the majority stakeholder protected the former CEO? Repeatedly, the man said, even when it was not deserved. A murmur moved through the room. His chest tightened like it couldn't decide whether to breathe or collapse. He couldn't look at anyone. Because suddenly, the story in his head, the story where she had been quietly waiting to punish him, started to fracture. It wasn't punishment, it was boundary, it was survival. After the briefing ended, people stood and began leaving in clusters. He stayed seated, staring at the final slide like it might change if he blinked hard enough. He felt a presence beside him. Legal sat down quietly. He didn't speak first. Neither did she. Finally, he asked the only question that mattered. Why did she invite me? Legal's expression softened just slightly. She didn't want you making up stories about what happened. She wanted you to know what was real. He swallowed. So she protected me? Legal nodded. Even after you fired her, there were legal exposures. If the wrong people had gotten involved, you could have been ruined. Why? His voice broke on the word. Why would she do that? Legal looked at him for a long moment, then answered carefully. Because she didn't want the company to survive by becoming cruel, and she didn't want you to be destroyed just so she could feel justified. His eyes burned. He looked away fast, ashamed of the reaction. I don't deserve that, he whispered. No, Legal said quietly. You don't. The blunt honesty landed harder than comfort ever could. He nodded slowly. Will she talk to me? Legal shook her head. No. Ever? Legal hesitated. That's not a question I can answer, but she asked me to give you something. She handed him a small envelope. His hands shook as he took it. He didn't open it yet. He couldn't. Outside, the air was cold enough to clear his head, but not cold enough to numb the ache. He sat in his car and stared at the envelope. Then he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature. Just a few lines, written in the same precise style she used when she corrected contracts. You wanted proof you were in control, so I gave you your final decision. I didn't take anything from you that you didn't hand away. I protected what we built. I protected you from what you deserved. This is the last protection I'm offering. The truth. His throat tightened so hard it hurt. He read it again, then again. Not because he didn't understand, because understanding didn't make it easier. He folded the paper carefully and put it back in the envelope like it was fragile. Weeks passed. He didn't spiral this time. He didn't chase her. He didn't send messages that would go unanswered. He did the one thing he'd never done when it mattered. He respected the boundary. He focused on his work, on helping small founders not repeat his mistakes. And it changed the way he spoke. When someone bragged, he asked what they were hiding. When someone dismissed a quiet employee, he asked what they'd missed. When someone called another person useless, he stopped the conversation immediately. That's not a word leaders use, he said once, surprising even himself. That's a word insecure people use when they're scared. The room had gone quiet. A younger version of him would have filled the silence with arrogance. Now, he let it hang. Months later, he attended a charity event for a client. He almost didn't go. Crowds still made him feel exposed. He arrived late, stayed near the back, and planned to leave early. Then he saw her, not close, not approaching. Just across the room, speaking to someone near a side exit. No spotlight, no entourage, just calm. He didn't move, he didn't wave, he didn't chase. He watched her for a moment, and the strangest feelings settled in his chest. Not longing, not anger. Gratitude so sharp it hurt. She turned slightly, not toward him exactly, just enough that he wondered if she already knew he was there. Their eyes didn't meet, and somehow, that was the point. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with distance. And sometimes, distance is the only honest ending.